Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tyree Crawford, Ronell Foster, Paul O'Neill, Aaron Bailey, Dominique Clayton, Christopher Davis, and Marco Loud. These people were failed by our country's justice system, criminalized because of the color of their skin, and killed in cold blood. I say their names because, in the eyes of white America, their deaths were justified, and I just do not think that is true. Their crimes were not punishable by death, and these people should be alive today. They were victims of our prejudice-riddled justice system. I feel that I can tell this speech because I am a Black American who has educated herself on all of the injustices that us Black Americans have gone through in the history of America, from the ending of the Civil War to mass incarceration, war on drugs, things like that. And I feel that I can tell people about these injustices in a way that they will understand. Due to systematic racism, Black Americans do not receive justice because of unjust jail sentences, lack of police prosecution, and they are met with violence when trying to peacefully protest. Black Americans have received the short end of the stick in this country when it comes to anything, and one of the main things are unjust jail sentences. In the election of 2016, a Black woman named Crystal Mason submitted a provisional ballot, and she was charged with illegal voting because she had previously been in prison and her voting rights had been taken away from her, and she was not aware. She's currently fighting that the 5-year sentence because she truly did not know, and she stated that if she would have known that this would have been the result, she would not have gone to vote that day. In 2020, in the election of 2020, a man named Bruce Bartman registered his deceased mother-in-law and mother as Republicans and submitted an absentee ballot for his mother, and he was only sentenced to 5 months probation. And his reasoning was because he watched too much propaganda. Black Americans receive harsh punishment when they commit minor crimes, but when they are wronged, they receive no justice. Unarmed Black Americans are killed. When unarmed Black Americans are killed by the police, no one is held accountable. According to the Washington Post, Black Americans account for 13% of the population, but are killed at twice the rate of white Americans. From January of 2015 to May of 2020, 1,252 unarmed Black men and women were killed. 75% of the officers who were involved in those killings were white. 15 of them, it was not their first offense, and they were involved in multiple from 3 to 4. And for one of the officers, he had only been on duty for 4 hours before killing an unarmed Black man. This lack of accountability creates a constant threat for the lives of Black Americans and a constant distrust in police. On May 13th, 2019, a woman named Pamela Turner was killed by a man named Officer Juan de la Cruz, and Pamela was in the middle of a mental crisis. She had schizophrenia, and the officer did not take that into account before trying to detain her. He was trying to detain her because she had outstanding warrants, but she was in the middle of a mental frenzy, so she was not in her right state of mind. He was trying to restrain her, had her on the ground, was punching her, tased her, and then ultimately shot her. And he was not fired. He was placed on non-enforcement duty, and he was not fired. On March 13, 2020, Breonna Taylor was killed by officers in plain clothes who were executing a search warrant, and they entered her apartment unannounced, and her boyfriend Kenneth Walker was there, and he thought someone was trying to break in, so he was shooting at them, and one of the bullets struck one of the officers in his leg, and they sent 32 rounds into her apartment, her dark apartment, and killed her. And none of the officers were held accountable for her death. And they also tried to charge her boyfriend with shooting one of the officers but he was not convicted. And protests because of deaths like Pamela Turner's and Breonna Taylor's broke out on May 26th. And while they were trying to receive justice for these people's lives, they were met with injustices of police brutality. Black Americans were met with violence when they were peacefully protesting on May 26th of 2020. Protests broke out because the video of George Floyd's death was circling around the internet, and the media tried to make it seem as though Black Lives Matter protests were all violent, but in reality, according to the U.S. Crisis Monitor, only 7% of them were violent or ended up violent, and 93% of them were peaceful. According to the HuffPost, while most of the protests have been nonviolent, police and other authorities intervened in about 725 Black Lives Matter protests between May 24th and August 22nd of 2020. And when they intervened, the peaceful protesters were met with tear gas, rubber bullets, and beatings with the batons and stuff like that. On May 30th, a police officer drove his SUV through a group of Black Lives Matter protesters, knocking some of them to the ground. And a day before that, Donia Zayer was assaulted by an officer, causing her to have a seizure and a concussion. Although it is said that America is not a racist country by the only Black Republican in Senate, Tim Scott, the facts show different, and I hope that my speech has shown you how I see America through a Black woman's eyes. Black Americans receive injustices by receiving harsher sentences, by lack of police prosecution, and being met with violence when trying to peacefully protest these injustices. And changes need to be made by first acknowledging the problem. It seems as though a lot of people don't believe that Black people still experience injustices because they're not as bad as they used to be, but they are still around, and racism is still alive and well. And Black Americans do not deserve the treatment that they are met with in America, because they basically built America and have contributed a lot to the building of this country and to the economy. And at one point, the Black Americans were the base of this economy, and after the Civil War, when slaves were freed, the South economy was in shambles because there was no more slavery, and they tried systematically, they criminalized Black people, allowing them to be thrown in prison and basically thrown back into slavery. But with that being said, Black Americans have contributed a lot to this country and do not deserve the unjust treatment that they receive today. Thank you.